Before there was America's rise, before the sun ever set on the idea of global power, there was an island, small, gray, windswept, that decided it would rule the world. This is the story of how Britain, a nation no larger than the state of Kansas, conquered oceans, crushed empires, and redrew the world map. Not once, but for centuries. The story of power built on trade, blood, and war. The story of the British Empire. The war for the world. The year is 1497. A man named John Cabot, an Italian explorer sailing under the English flag, spots land, Newfoundland. He doesn't know it yet, but that sighting will ignite a dream inside the English crown. If Spain can have the new world, why can't we? At this time, England is not yet an empire. It's poor, unstable, and overshadowed by Spain, whose galleons overflow with gold from the Americas. But England has something Spain doesn't: hunger. The Spanish conquered for faith. The Portuguese conquered for trade. But the English, they would conquer for survival. In 1588, the world changes. Spain sends its mighty armada, the largest naval fleet the world has ever seen, to crush Protestant England. But storms, cannons, and luck turn the tide. The English, led by Sir Francis Drake, defeat the Spanish Armada in one of the most astonishing naval battles in history. From that moment, the seas belonged not to Spain, but to Britain. The ocean becomes their battlefield, their fortress, their kingdom. And every ship they send out is a weapon, not just of war, but of ambition. By the early 1600s, a new kind of empire begins. Not built by kings or generals, but by merchants. The East India Company. What began as a group of London businessmen trading spices would become the most powerful corporate army in history. They sailed to India, set up trading posts, made deals with kings, and slowly, quietly, built control through gold and gunpowder. Britain discovered something greater than conquest commerce with a sword. Across the Atlantic, in 1607, another chapter begins. Jamestown, Virginia, the first permanent English settlement in North America. It's a desperate struggle against disease, starvation, and native resistance. But the colony survives, and soon, tobacco, sugar, and slaves become the new currency of empire. Britain builds colonies from Caribbean islands to India's coasts, from Canada to Africa. Every ship carries more than goods. It carries the empire's will. The world's map begins to change, and every red mark on it means another nation subdued. But empire always comes with resistance. By the 1700s, Britain's colonies in America are growing restless. They've fought Britain's wars, paid Britain's taxes, and now they demand freedom. The American Revolution tears through the empire like fire through dry grass. For the first time, Britain meets a colony that refuses to kneel. A war that would end with something unthinkable. An empire losing to its own children. When the smoke clears, the United States of America is born. The empire is wounded, but not dead. Because across the world, in India, Britain finds a new prize. The Battle of Plassey, 1757, a small British force, led by Robert Clive, faces an army 10 times its size. Through cunning, betrayal, and firepower, Britain wins. That victory doesn't just give them a battlefield, it gives them India, an island nation, now ruled a continent. And for the next 2 centuries, India would become Britain's greatest source of wealth and its greatest moral burden. The empire begins to call itself something new: the workshop of the world. Its goods, its soldiers, its ships dominate every ocean, every market, every war. By the 1800s, Britain stands alone at the top of global power. It controls a quarter of the Earth's land and a quarter of its people. It builds railways in Africa, telegraph lines in Asia, and fleets that can reach anywhere on the planet. For 100 years, the sun never sets on the British Empire. But beneath the glory, rebellion, exploitation, and unrest are rising. The Boer Wars in South Africa, the Opium Wars in China, the Sepoy Rebellion in India. Every rebellion bleeds the empire, and every victory costs it its soul. Britain keeps winning battles, but it's slowly losing the world's heart. Then comes 1914, the Great War. Britain fights for survival once again, but this time, not for colonies, for civilization itself. The cost, millions of lives, and the beginning of the end. After World War II, the empire crumbles. India gains independence. Africa follows. The red fade on the map becomes unstoppable. For centuries, Britain ruled the waves, but in the end, even the tide turns. Today, the British Empire is gone, but its shadow remains. Its language, its systems, its scars stretch from Canada to Kenya, from India to Australia. It was the greatest empire the world has ever known, born from ambition, fueled by conquest, and undone by time. Its story is not just of kings and colonies, but of how one small island changed the destiny of the entire world. Ever wondered how one small island nation came to rule over a quarter of the world's population? It's a story of ambition, innovation, and immense controversy. Let's dive into the epic rise and fall of the British Empire. Our story begins in the late 16th century. England, a relatively minor player on the European stage, started looking across the seas. The defeat of the Spanish Armada in 1588 was a huge confidence boost. It opened the oceans for English ships, not just for exploration, but for trade. Early ventures in North America and the Caribbean, like Jamestown, founded in 1607, were the first small steps, but it was the pursuit of wealth, spices, sugar, tobacco that truly fueled the expansion. Companies like the East India Company were established, acting almost as private armies and governments, setting up trading posts in India and beyond. The 18th century was through a series of wars, especially against France. Britain secured its dominance in North America and India. The Industrial Revolution kicked off back home, giving Britain an unprecedented technological and economic edge. Its factories needed raw materials, and its growing population needed new markets. The empire provided both. This was the era of the First British Empire, largely focused on the Americas. However, it suffered a major blow with the American Revolution. Losing the 13 colonies was a wake-up call, forcing Britain to pivot its imperial focus elsewhere. This pivot led to the Second British Empire, the one we most often picture. The 19th century was Britain's imperial golden age, the so-called Pax Britannica, or British peace. With the most powerful navy in the world, Britain could project its power anywhere. The focus shifted to Asia, Africa, and the Pacific. The scramble for Africa in the late 1800s saw Britain claim vast territories from Egypt down to South Africa. In Asia, British control over India, the jewel in the crown, was solidified. Australia and New Zealand became settler colonies. By 1921, the British Empire was at its peak, the largest empire in history, ruling over 450 million people. It was famously said, "The sun never sets on the British Empire." But empires, by their very nature, are not permanent. The seeds of decline were sown even at its height. The two world wars took a massive toll on Britain's economy and military. The very ideals of freedom and self-determination that Britain claimed to champion were being used against its own rule by independence movements across the globe. In India, Mahatma Gandhi's non-violent resistance inspired millions and captured the world's attention. After World War II, a war-weary and financially drained Britain could no longer justify or afford its empire. The decolonization process happened rapidly. India and Pakistan gained independence in 1947, a landmark moment that triggered a domino effect. Over the next few decades, colonies across Africa, the Caribbean, and Asia followed suit, peacefully or through conflict. The Suez Crisis of 1956 was a final, humiliating nail in the coffin, proving that Britain was no longer a dominant world power without the support of the United States. The official end is often marked by the handover of Hong Kong to China in 1997. Today, the legacy of the British Empire is complex and hotly debated. It left behind systems of law, government, and the English language across the globe, but it also left deep scars of exploitation, conflict, and inequality that many nations are still grappling with. What remains is the Commonwealth, a voluntary association of 56 independent countries, a faint echo of a once mighty empire. The story of the British Empire is a powerful reminder of how quickly global power can shift, and how the quest for empire inevitably shapes the world for centuries to come. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey through history interesting, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more. See you in the next one. When the empire fell, it didn't vanish. It transformed. Its soldiers went home. Its colonies became nations. Its crown lost its dominion, but not its memory. The British Empire, once the greatest power the world had ever known, left behind a legacy too vast to erase. A legacy that still defines the modern age. The world the empire left behind. In the aftermath of World War II, Britain was broken. Cities lay in ruins. The treasury was empty. And yet, something unexpected happened. The empire's collapse gave birth to a new world, one connected by language, trade, and culture. The British Empire had ruled by force, but its echo would rule by influence. The colonies it once governed, India, Australia, Canada, Nigeria, Pakistan, Kenya, now stood as free nations, writing their own destinies. But they carried within them the systems Britain left behind: parliamentary government, railways, courts, education, and the English tongue. The empire was gone, but its fingerprints were everywhere. The age of winds and shadows. Britain called upon its former colonies for help rebuilding after the war. From the Caribbean came workers on ships like the Empire went. From India and Pakistan, engineers, doctors, and dreamers arrived. A new Britain was being born, multicultural, diverse, rebuilt by the very people it had once ruled. But the transition was not easy. Racism, class division, and nostalgia for lost power haunted the nation. The empire had conquered the world, but now the world was coming home to Britain. The Cold War and the Commonwealth. As America and the Soviet Union divided the world, Britain found a new identity. No longer a ruler, but a bridge. The Commonwealth of Nations was formed, a loose alliance of former colonies and dominions bound by shared history. No longer by conquest, but by cooperation. It was the empire reborn, not as a force of domination, but as a family of nations. Through diplomacy, trade, and language, Britain remained relevant even as new powers rose. Yet, behind the diplomacy, the empire's old ghosts stirred disputes in Africa, wars in the Middle East, unrest in Northern Ireland. The shadow of empire still stretched far beyond its shores. The cost of power. The empire had given Britain unmatched wealth, but it had also planted pain, deep, generational wounds across continents. In Kenya, the Momo rebellion scarred both sides. In India, partition tore a nation in two. In the Caribbean, generations still lived in the echo of slavery and exploitation. Empires do not end when the flags fall. They end when the memories fade, and some memories never do. Today, debates over reparations, migration, and identity still burn across the lands the empire once ruled. The past is not dead. It speaks through the present, the crown, and the people. When Queen Elizabeth II took the throne, she inherited a world already slipping from Britain's grasp. Yet, through her reign, she became a symbol, not of empire, but of For 70 years, the monarchy adapted, turning imperial glory into cultural diplomacy. She visited dozens of nations, once colonies, now equals. Her reign was the closing chapter of empire, a reminder that power fades, but legacy endures. When she passed, millions across the Commonwealth mourned, not for empire, but for the history they shared. The modern empire. In the 21st century, Britain still wields influence, not with armies, but with ideas. English is the global language. London remains a financial heart of the world. Its universities attract minds from every corner of the globe. But the empire's ghost still lingers in modern conflicts, in borders drawn in haste, in divided nations, in inequalities born of centuries of control. The empire's weapons were ships and soldiers. Its legacy is far more subtle, woven into the world's laws, cultures, and identities. Reflection. The empire within. For many young Britons today, Empire is a story told in textbooks, distant, abstract, but in truth, the empire lives in their languages, their streets, their bloodlines. The empire is not gone. It has become us. Its triumphs built modern civilization. Its crimes remind us what power can destroy. History is not clean. It is both light and shadow, and the British Empire was both the echo across the world. Today, the former empire's nations rise as powers in their own right. India, once ruled, now a technological giant. Australia, a global voice for democracy. Africa, young, vibrant, rising. And Britain, older, humbler, learning to live in a world it no longer controls. From empire came equality. From domination came diversity. From war came wisdom. The world Britain built through conquest is now a world that teaches it humility. Closing reflection, the war for the world. In the end, every empire fights a war it cannot win. The war against time. The British Empire began as a handful of explorers, chasing glory across endless seas. It became the greatest empire in human history, commanding the waves, shaping nations, changing humanity itself. But the true war was never fought on battlefields. It was fought in hearts between greed and progress, conquest and conscience. And that war still continues. Because empire, in the end, is not just about kings or colonies. It's about us. Our hunger for power, our fear of losing it, and our struggle to find meaning after it's gone.